It was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. Hours earlier, she had walked down the aisle, said her vows, exchanged rings, and danced beneath the warm glow of candlelight, surrounded by family and friends. Every moment carefully planned, every detail perfect. A white dress, fresh flowers, laughter echoing through the night, a promise of forever. But forever never came. Sometime after the last toast was made, after the guests had gone home and the music had faded, something went terribly wrong. In the quiet hours of the night, along a lonely stretch of road, the dream shattered. A horrific discovery, so gruesome, so unthinkable, that even seasoned investigators struggled to understand what had happened. At first, the answer seemed obvious: a tragic accident, a devastating loss. But as the pieces came together, they revealed something far more unsettling. The crash was real, the wreckage undeniable. The blood-stained pavement told a story of impact, of force, of finality. But the body was in pieces. A bride found dismembered, her wedding dress torn and scattered across the asphalt like remnants of a broken fairy tale. Her husband found alive, a witness calling for help, and driver David Turner is missing. A name, barely whispered at first, would soon become the center of the investigation. A man who had disappeared into the night, leaving behind a trail of questions and a secret buried deep beneath the surface. Was it truly an accident? A case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or had the events of that night unfolded in a way no one could have imagined? As detectives began unraveling the truth, one thing became clear. The story didn't end with the crash. In fact, it was just the beginning. A wedding day is meant to be remembered. The vows, the promises, the laughter shared between family and friends. A bride in white, a groom in black, standing together at the start of something new. The sound of a camera shutter, the clinking of glasses, the echoes of celebration filling the night. A perfect picture, a moment frozen in time. But perfection is fragile. As the final guests said their goodbyes, as the candles burned low and the music faded into silence, the night took a turn no one could have predicted. Somewhere between the reception hall and the place they were meant to spend their first night as husband and wife, something happened. Something unexplainable. Something horrifying. It began with a call, frantic, breathless, urgent. There's been an accident. A dark road, an empty stretch of highway, flashing lights reflected against shattered glass. The wreckage of a car, twisted, broken. A man pulled from the driver's seat, his suit torn, his hands shaking. But where was she? Then a discovery, a trail of white fabric, delicate lace dragging across the asphalt, blood smeared and scattered like the remnants of a violent struggle. And then, what they had been afraid to find. A body, or at least what was left of one. A young bride, no longer recognizable. Her limbs severed, her body torn apart. What should have been the beginning of a lifelong love story had instead become a scene too gruesome to comprehend. At first it seemed clear, a tragic accident, a night that had gone horribly wrong. But as investigators combed through the wreckage, as they pieced together the final moments before impact, a different story began to emerge. A story that didn't end with a crash. A story that suggested there was more to this night than anyone was willing to say. Because somewhere in the distance, just beyond the reach of the flashing lights and the scattered debris, there was another presence. Something, or someone, who had been there. Watching, waiting, and when the truth finally came to light, it would shake everyone to their core. Her name was Lila Bennett. She was 25 years old. Hours earlier, she had been a bride, standing before her friends and family, smiling, laughing, celebrating the happiest day of her life. But in the end, she would never make it past her wedding night. Her body was found mutilated, scattered across the road. a scene so disturbing that even the most seasoned investigators struggled to process what they were looking at. At first, it was ruled a tragic accident, the unfortunate result of a night gone wrong. But as the details emerged, it became clear. This wasn't just a simple case of a crash on a dark highway. There was something more beneath the surface. And the man at the center of it all? He had been keeping a secret. One buried for years, one he never thought would come to light. Tonight, we uncover the truth behind what really happened to Lila Bennett. A night that should have ended in love, but instead ended in tragedy. Stay with me as we break down every chilling detail, and if you don't want to miss more true crime cases like this, hit subscribe now. Let's begin. The highway stretched for miles, empty, silent, swallowed by the darkness. A two-lane road cutting through the trees, barely lit by the occasional flicker of a distant street lamp. At this hour, the world had gone quiet. Most people were home, asleep, lost in the peacefulness of the night. But not here. Not on this road. At exactly 11:47 p.m., a call came into 911. The voice on the other end, shaken, breathless, was that of a truck driver. His words were clipped, his breathing uneven. He had seen a wreck, he told the dispatcher. A car, completely totaled, sitting motionless in the middle of the road. The headlights flickered, the front end crumpled beyond recognition. Shattered glass and twisted metal littered the pavement. And then there was the dress. White fabric, tattered, blood-stained, caught in the wind as it dragged across the asphalt. A delicate thing, meant for a night of celebration, now discarded like an afterthought. The truck driver had slammed his brakes, his hands gripping the wheel as his headlights illuminated what he thought, what he hoped, was just a bundle of cloth. But as he stepped out of his vehicle, as he walked closer, the truth became undeniable. It wasn't just a dress. It was a body, or at least part of one. Legs severed at the knee, arms twisted at unnatural angles. The remnants of a woman who, just hours before, had been standing at an altar saying, "I do." 911, what's your emergency? There's been a crash. I don't know what I'm looking at. There's a dress on the road, blood everywhere, but I don't see her. I don't see the rest of her. The dispatcher's voice was calm, steady, asking for details. But the driver could barely find the words, because there, on the pavement, surrounded by the wreckage, was a horrifying question. Where was the rest of her? When officers arrived minutes later, their first assumption was clear. This was a hit and run. A tragic accident. The kind that happens on roads like this all too often. They taped off the area, took photos, and marked the evidence. The groom had been found near the car, bloodied, disoriented, mumbling about the crash. He couldn't seem to explain what had happened and couldn't answer their questions. The impact must have thrown her from the vehicle, they reasoned. A violent ejection, a horrific landing. But then, just a few feet away from the wreck, an officer spotted something. A trail. A dark, wet trail smeared across the pavement, leading away from the dress, leading into the trees. And what they found there would change everything. In the early hours of the morning, the pieces of the puzzle seemed scattered, each one leading in different directions. The wreckage was clear, a car torn apart, a trail of blood and fabric marking the way. But the evidence? It didn't add up. What should have been a simple case of a hit and run was anything but. First, there was the body, or what was left of it. It wasn't just a tragic death in a car crash. No, this was something far more disturbing. The woman had been dismembered, her limbs severed with such precision that it couldn't have been the result of the accident itself. The car had hit a guardrail, causing damage to the front end, but there were no signs of impact that would explain the way her body was torn apart. She had been moved. Moved. But by who? And why? As the police began their investigation, they turned their attention to the man who had been found at the scene. The groom, bloodied, disoriented, barely able to speak but conscious. He had been in the car, yes, but he didn't remember much. The crash had happened too fast. One moment they were driving, the next, everything was chaos. His mind was clouded by shock, but his eyes told a different story. Fear, confusion, a sense that someone, had changed the course of that night. In the chaos of the wreck, it was clear that he had been knocked unconscious. He didn't know where his wife was. She was supposed to be beside him, but she wasn't. The police moved quickly, searching for any clue that would explain what had happened. Their first step was to examine the area for any sign of the vehicle that had caused the crash. A hit-and-run vehicle, they thought. A black truck. But when the security footage from a nearby gas station surfaced, it revealed something unexpected. The camera had captured a black pickup truck speeding away from the scene, but not the way they had anticipated. It wasn't driving erratically, nor was it fleeing the area in panic. It sped off, yes, but with purpose, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Whoever had been behind the wheel was calm, controlled, and completely aware of their actions. The truck had left the area too quickly for the police to get a solid description of the driver. The footage was blurry, but the picture was clear. This wasn't an accident. It was something else. With each passing hour, the investigators grew more certain. This wasn't a simple hit and run. The pieces of the puzzle didn't fit together. The blood trail, the missing woman, the dismemberment. Someone had planned this. Someone had made sure that there would be no easy answers. And then came the toxicology report. When the results came back, investigators were stunned. The groom's blood showed signs of alcohol, but it wasn't just the amount of alcohol that raised questions. There were traces of something else, something unexpected. A substance that had no business being in his system, something that wasn't consistent with his story. The findings didn't align with the image of a man who had just been in a traumatic crash. And the question, once again, was, what was he hiding? But at this point, the investigation had only just begun. The investigation had already taken a disturbing turn, but as detectives sifted through the evidence, they began to unravel truths that no one could have anticipated. What had once appeared to be a simple case of a tragic accident was starting to reveal something much darker, a web of deception, lies, and unsettling secrets that stretched far beyond the wreckage of a single night. The first twist came when the toxicology report for the bride, Lila Bennett, was released. The results? Shocking. Her blood alcohol content was far higher than anyone could have imagined, the kind of level that suggested she had been drinking heavily, maybe even more than a few drinks. But as investigators went over the evidence, they found something far more disturbing. There were traces of another substance in her system, something that shouldn't have been there, something that could suggest she wasn't drinking voluntarily at all. Was she drugged? And if so, by whom? The questions piled up. The second twist came when investigators took a closer look at the groom's story. His words initially had seemed sincere. He had said they crashed, and when he came to, she was gone. That was his account, and it seemed reasonable at first. But the injuries found on the bride's body didn't match his version of events. They didn't line up with a simple car crash. She hadn't vanished. She had been taken, moved, and her injuries didn't suggest an accident at all. It looked like someone had been trying to hide the truth. Someone was covering their tracks. But the most shocking revelation came when police finally traced the mysterious black pickup truck that had been spotted leaving the scene. The truck that had seemed so ordinary at first glance. A security camera had caught it speeding away, and at first no one thought much of it. But further investigation into the vehicle's registration led them to a name. The owner of the truck, a man with a criminal record, one that seemed eerily fitting for the case. This man, identified as David Turner, was a repeat DUI offender, a man who had been arrested multiple times for driving under the influence, but each time had somehow avoided the consequences. Until that night, when detectives discovered something chilling David Turner had vanished that evening. He wasn't answering his phone, he wasn't at home, and no one had seen him since the crash. The police had no idea where he was, but they were certain he had the answers. One man knew what happened that night. One man could explain everything, but he refused to speak. His silence was deafening, his absence a puzzle in itself. It seemed as if he was trying to bury whatever he knew, until detectives made a discovery that would shatter the case wide open. Inside the suspect's garage. There, in the darkness of the garage, hidden behind piles of discarded furniture, tools, and old boxes, police found something unexpected. Something that ties everything together. The missing piece. A piece of evidence that confirmed the worst of their suspicions. A piece that left no room for doubt. What they found there would change everything. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and with each new discovery, the truth began to seep out, piece by piece. As the investigation progressed, the truth behind what had really happened that night became murkier with every new lead. For months, people have debated the events of that tragic evening. What really happened on that foggy stretch of road? Was it a horrific accident, a moment of panicked regret, or something far worse? The theories are as numerous as they are chilling. The primary theory, the one that many have believed, is that the suspect, David Turner, hit the bride by accident. The crash was never intentional, but it was what happened next, what he did after the impact, that truly twisted the case. Instead of calling for help, instead of doing the right thing, he panicked. His actions after the crash were cold and calculated. Instead of trying to save her, he moved her body, trying to hide what he had done. Why? What was he afraid of? Was it the fear of facing the consequences of his past, or was it something even darker, something in him that made him willing to go to extreme lengths to cover up the truth? But then, there's the alternate theory. Could the groom have been involved? His story, his inconsistent account of the events that night, raised more questions than answers. He claimed they had crashed, and when he came to, she was gone. But why didn't the evidence match that? Why did his statement seem to change under pressure? Was he trying to protect someone, or was he hiding something darker himself? Some believe the groom knew more about the suspect than he let on. Did he know him personally? Did they have a connection that tied them together in a way no one could have imagined? Theories swirl online, with people across the world attempting to piece together the truth. Some say it was nothing more than a tragic accident, a series of unfortunate events that spiraled out of control. Others argue it was a carefully orchestrated attempt to cover up something much darker, the tragic result of a twisted mind trying to evade justice. The case continues to captivate, leaving those who hear it asking one question above all others. What really happened that night? So what do you think? Was it a simple hit and run, or was there something far more malicious at play? Was the groom involved, or was he just a victim of the night's twisted turn of events? Let me know what you believe in the comments below. Your theories might just help us crack the case wide open. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This case is filled with twists and unanswered questions. There's no shortage of theories out there. Do you believe suspect's name was guilty of what happened that night? Or do you think there's another explanation we haven't uncovered yet? Let's discuss in the comments below and see what everyone thinks about this baffling case. And if you want more mind-blowing true crime stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I upload new deep dives every week, so you won't want to miss the next case. It's a mystery that might just keep you up at night. Hit subscribe now, and let's keep unraveling these chilling stories together. If you thought this case was shocking, wait until you hear about the next one. It's a story so chilling, so filled with twists, you won't believe your ears. A case that haunted investigators for years, and one that might make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Click here to watch now and prepare for a case that will chill you to the bone. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another shocking story. I'll see you in the next video.